Right, good morning everyone, and welcome to MEF 2018. Again, Satya Parimi. I work in Spectrum Enterprise, which is a part of Charter Communication that focuses on serving the needs of larger businesses, specifically enterprises. So today, I'm here to talk about delivering network services for the digital economy. While a lot has happened in the last year around dynamic services, around network-based services, we still see a lot of the SDN NFV technology being primarily used to help service providers better deliver a lot of current services. And a lot of enterprises are still not seeing the benefits of SDN NFV technology that's going to make them buy a lot of these services in volume or migrate to these new solutions. So that's what I'm going to cover today. But let me start off and do a recap from last year. Last year, I called them network-based services. I guess the new terminology now is dynamic services. But primarily in the digital economy, enterprises and businesses need dynamic services, right? Static services we have today don't really work because things move faster than the networks are changing. So one way to look at this is to break down the current static service into its subcomponents, right? So you have connectivity, which is part of any network service. You have network functions, and you have management of the service. So all of this combined with a client experience that envelops everything, right? So this is the subcomponents of your typical static service. The goal now is to build new services, dynamic services, that customize by creating new services across these various functions. I'll give an example in a minute on how you do it. But not only that, you have to deliver this in an automated fashion and configurable fashion, not just in your network, but across networks as well, which a lot of work in the MEF goes around. The 3.0 LSO framework is all about that. And it's not just enough to provide services across the stack and across operators. You also need to provide visibility and control for the end customer. And the last point, which is very new, and I added it this year compared to last year, is increasingly these networks and these network services need to be aware of what's going on up the stack. Because in order to differentiate and to be successful in this new digital economy and digital economy needed services, we need to make sure the network can talk up the stack to the application layer. So it's all very theoretical. Let's talk about what does it look like in real time. So let's take the reaggregated components. How do you create a service, right? So you have your connectivity, all kinds of different connectivity from one operator, multiple operators. You have your typical network functions, right? Everything from internet, could be WAN, could be UTM, DDoS, security, content filtering. You have management capabilities up top. So today, when you have a service, they're a monolith, right? You have one vendor, one operator. It goes top to bottom. What we want to do with dynamic services is being able to stitch together services across operators, across network functions, across physical hardware. So you're not tied to an operator, you're not tied to a hardware vendor. The way you do it is, I'll give an example here, simple, good old internet access, right? Take your fiber, throw in some internet firewall, internet routing and firewall. That could be with the operator who's providing the connectivity, or it could be from another operator. And then service visibility and control on top. Or take another example of WAN services. This could be SD-WAN too. Dual access, some WAN functions, a number of different management options on top, right? So now you're reimagining services that are not bound to an operator and that is not bound to a hardware vendor or a monolithic set of hardware vendors. So you can mix and match and create these services. So over the last year, there's been a lot of interest and a lot of alignment across the industry that this is where we need to go, primarily by leveraging SDN NFV. So you can see a great shift in the industry, a great opportunity for the industry to move past the static services that are seeing massive price compression. For service providers to be successful, you need to create new innovative services that you can charge a premium because you're adding value or you're showing new value to enterprises. So in this environment, where do things stand, right? How are things going? So in a recent survey done by the MEF and with the VSG group, primarily around migration to MEF 3.0 services, and I'm going to use MEF 3.0 as a proxy for these dynamic services in general. What are the considerations? How rapidly are people moving? Let's look at the top business drivers. So what are service providers doing today with these dynamic services? There's a focus on delivering faster services. They want to rapidly use NFV-based virtual services, offer innovation, again, in service delivery, and also make changes, so MACD for your existing services, right? That's the top business drivers. Service providers are looking at new SDN NFV technologies to drive a lot of these activities. But then there's some significant challenges as well. Engineering expertise, we are all feeling the pain right now. It's hard to get good engineering expertise, especially in these next-gen services. MEF 3.0 certification is helpful. We're starting to send a lot of our people through 3.0 certification. The next big area is orchestration. Orchestration is increasingly a challenge, not just across service providers. Again, 3.0 LSO APIs help with it. But even within an operator's network, orchestrating across multiple technology domains is a major challenge. But this all presupposes you actually need orchestration. You cannot deliver these dynamic services without orchestration. It won't scale, and you cannot service assure the actual service itself without having orchestration. Add in the fact that you have a mix of physical and virtual infrastructure. Now you're operating in a hybrid environment. Orchestrating a service across physical and virtual can be extremely challenging, and a lot of service providers are going through that right now. And of course, no challenge section is done without OSS, BSS. Typically, they tend to lag innovative new products, and they end up still being a major challenge right now. So as we looked at what's happening in the service provider space with DSD and NFV technologies, dynamic services, this is where things stand. And what struck us very interestingly around the top business drivers, which is being echoed by a lot of enterprises we see, is a lot of the business drivers look very inside out. It's what the service providers want to do, right? We want to deliver services faster. We want to do it with lower cost. We want to do it faster. But a lot of the technology is being used to deliver current services in a better way, not new services. And is there enough compelling value to the enterprise to say, aha, these are great services. I'm going to pay a premium and buy these services. We're not seeing a lot of that happen. And a lot of you may have seen a number of surveys on size of various new dynamic services. They're not really taking off as fast as we all assumed. There is one truly new innovative service that leverages this, which is SD-WAN. But unfortunately, things got started out as a low-cost alternative to an MPLS type service. And once the price dynamic changes, that's no longer a driver to take on SD-WAN. So yes, there is a change now with SD-WAN standardization that helps. A lot more messaging and marketing around the benefits of SD-WAN, the feature functionality of SD-WAN should help improve the uptake. But if you see the numbers across various research firms, the over-the-top providers, the technology providers still own that part of the market, and service providers are still trying to ramp up and gain share there. So that got me thinking about, and at Spectrum Enterprise over the last 6 months as we've gone through our SD-WAN work, is how is it from the outside in, right? What are the enterprises saying? What do the enterprises want? What would trigger them to buy these services in large volume, right? When will they migrate off the static services? Because static services are going to see price compression, right? We're all feeling that right now, and it'll continue to accelerate. So we got to make the move to these next-gen services. So let's start from the enterprise perspective. At the end of the day, what the enterprises really need is to make sure the performance of their applications is good, that their applications are working well, and the end users, it could be their employees, it could be their clients or customers, that they have the right end user experience. It's as simple as that, right? All the technology behind it, the standards behind it, they hope the service provider or somebody else covers it for them. So what they're really looking for is dynamic services that gives them visibility and control to make sure, with flexibility, they can deliver on the performance of the application and the end user experience as well. So if you look at visibility, what does that mean, right? We do offer visibility. We all provide portals. Customers can see how the network is performing. You can see network stats. You can maybe see SLAs, how we are performing against SLAs. Increasingly, there's a lot of interest in cross-correlation of the network performance with the application itself, right? So they want to see how their application is performing relative to the network, because that becomes very important because they're triggered off, driven by how the performance of the application is for them. The next one is control. Now I can see what's going on my network. I want to do something about it, right? A lot of the changes today is proactive changes and reactive changes, but these don't happen real time. Something goes wrong in the network, you get an alert, you need to call somebody, you need to schedule some time, and then fix it, hopefully, very quickly. And now there's a lot of interest in gaining control that now you can use policies and intent to drive real-time changes to the network. And that's what gives them the real control they need to make sure that they can deliver on these end-user experience. So from an enterprise perspective, I'm not saying that visibility and control is what drives all enterprises to make buying decisions. There is cost, there is vertical solutions, there's a whole bunch of other aspects. But increasingly, when you talk to the enterprises, that's what they're saying. I mean, that's what we're hearing anyway, is show me differentiation, show me value on how I can make my applications and my end customer user experience better, and then I'm going to buy your service, because that's a truly differentiated service for them. So let's look at this visibility and control in a little more detail, right? Let's dig into what does it actually mean. And these needs also are evolving over time, right? So if you look at this across 4 aspects, we're going to use, for simplicity's sake, what the client experience looks like, what does the operator do in this scenario, what corrective actions could be taken, and what data sets are they working with, right? So today, everything is project ticket-based. Something happens in the network, there's an alert that goes out. Either you get the alert as an enterprise, or the service provider gets the alert if it's a managed service. They say something's not right with the network, we need to do something. Some things can be changed maybe fairly quickly. Most of the time, you schedule some time during a window, change management window, or if you need to swap out a box or add more capacity, that could be weeks in some cases. It's all reactive, but you're still living with the problem, right? The problem doesn't go away. You just found out about the problem, and you're waiting for it to be fixed. And you're working off all historical data sets here. The evolution from there is to more policy-based visibility and control. What does that mean? And this is, a lot of service providers are working in this space. Unfortunately, I think we're not highlighting more and more some of these capabilities, which I think are true differentiations and benefits for enterprises. Here, you set policies saying, if this, I want this to happen, if this, I want this. You can make it as simple or as complex. And the network monitors these activities and reacts in real time. Not really real time, it's near real time, because when you do policy-based, it takes some time to detect a policy has been violated, and it takes a little more time to make some change to take into effect. So it could be anywhere from 30 seconds to maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes before you see the change. But that's pretty close to near real time versus saying, hey, we have a change management window, maintenance window, Tuesday evening, and this is a week out, for example. Here, the changes are proactive. You're using real-time data sets. There's a lot of activity in this space, especially with application-aware solutions where you're taking real-time network stats, you're taking real-time application stats, you're applying some policies to it using policy engines, and you're orchestrating changes from there across one operator or multi-operators network, right? That is a true value to an enterprise. My video conferencing doesn't work, right? Today, you need to open a ticket, you figure out if you have enough bandwidth, you have congestion in the network, make some changes. Policy-based, within a few seconds to a few minutes, you can get it up and running. Or you can fix the network or change the network to make sure you get the right experience. The last end state, some call it intent-based. I'm just using that, I don't think it's an industry accepted standard, but intent-based is where the network in an autonomous and automated way making changes based on learnings in the past, right? So using a lot of AI, machine learning to say, hey, the general trend for this office looks like at 2 o'clock there's a big spike in bandwidth use because there's a bunch of conference calls, video conference calls that happen at this time, right? So the network learns, and that 30 seconds to 2-minute lag goes away because proactively, before it kicks in, the network is improving. So the experience changes from we're sitting through a minute or 2 minutes of patchy video or patchy application performance before it normalizes to you never see that happen, right? So that's the evolution. From an enterprise perspective, that's what they want, right? They want their applications to work well. They want to have great end user experience. And it's up to the service providers now to figure out how, right? How do you deliver this? How do you charge for this, right? How do you assure and ensure that you can deliver on these? That's up to the service providers. But to get truly big uptake and move into these new dynamic services, we have to provide value and feature functionality, not just on price, right? I mean, there's a lot of value we can offer using a lot of SDN NFV technology where we can pass on some of the savings to the end customer, but they dry out. There's only so much you can cut from a cost perspective. So you need to come up with innovative services that drive incremental benefit for the end customer. So where is the industry right now? Probably in the middle pad, the policy-based section. There's a lot of innovative stuff going on in intent. There's a lot of interesting startups, a lot of new technology, but it's not really ready, but policy-based. So I'm going to give an example of a policy-based dynamic service. Here, and this is something we're showing in the proof of concept here on the show floor. A policy-based dynamic service, especially that's application aware, that's where the differentiation really comes in. So if the network can detect what's happening at the application layer, set the defined policies, that's the one at the top, then the network monitors what's going on, analyzes all the activities in the network. When an event gets triggered, you can, in an automated fashion, or maybe you give a 30-minute time for the service provider to want to make the change or stop the change, orchestrate the change across the network, again, across one provider's network or multi-provider's network, and then show that visibility back into the customer. So now you've taken away complexity and resources that the enterprise needs to spend to make this happen. That's value, right? They're seeing better performance and a reduction in cost, and you're simplifying an enterprise's life. So I'll give you a quick example. We're using a very simplistic example just to make this come alive. So if you want to have a video app, that's a very common example here. It could be video conferencing, it could be VR-based training. You need to get to, if there's a trigger where greater than 25% of the bandwidth is being used for video, it's a very simple example. You can do corrective actions. You can say, hey, just bump up my whole pipe. Go from 100 meg to 200 meg. Not just on my network, but end-to-end across my partner's network as well. Or maybe you change class of service, change prioritization, or do both. You can set the policies any way you want. And this could be as simple plug and play. You can put basic policy-based settings, and you can move from there. And then, like I said, we're demonstrating this at the proof of concept, and stop by our booth as well if you're interested to look at this. But what this gets to is you're showing incremental value to the client, right? And eventually, when you get to intent-based, it becomes even more compelling value. And that's what's going to drive, outside of just getting your infrastructure in place, having NFV everywhere, edge computing, all of these infrastructure elements need to be in place. But the key is to show these up as services to an end customer. So if I redo my prior slide around dynamic services, if I knew what I knew now last year, I would have taken my baseline that said connectivity, network functions management. This is still dynamic, but dynamic for what I offer today. It's still internet access. It's still WAN. Customers are like, that's great. What's something new I'm getting, right? You're just doing this better, the service you already have today. Maybe that's where you need a layer on top, right? Where you need to, maybe you can't call them internet access. Maybe you can't call them WAN, right? It's maybe network as a service. It could be UCaaS. It could be security as a service. Again, as long as we stay in the constructs of the static services, people's perceptions stay the same. It's internet access. It's WAN. It's security. We have to change it by offering these dynamic services. Maybe they're called something else, but they also show differentiated value. You get something different and more than what you get today using the static services. So That's what we are trying to do, and that's what I would like to see more in the service provider space. Think about how do we position and how do we message the benefits of all these new services to the enterprise, because that's what's going to drive them to adopt these at scale. So let me summarize by saying dynamic services are important. I think we're kind of moved past that. That was last year's news, right? We all believe we need new services, more dynamic, innovative services, and that's what enterprises need too. So there is a need, and there is a ability to do it as well. But there's still some key challenges that we talked about that we need to get over. And the opportunities are not just for the service provider to do what they're doing better, but also do new things as well. But what we really need to start thinking about, like I said before, is it's the customer experience, the customer value, and the trigger that says this is good enough for me to say I'm going to make this move from these legacy static services to these new dynamic services. And that starts, we believe, with visibility and control are very key elements. However, they manifest themselves to the customer, but those are really important and tied together with near real-time performance. So they want to see things happen real-time, maybe not right away, but at least near real-time will work. And the key is for service providers not only to message, but also collaborate to make sure these can be delivered, not just within the network, but across service providers' network. So a lot of the work the MEF is doing around the LSO APIs, certification for people, standardization, that's another big help. We've seen this with CE 2.0. Once the service gets standardized, everybody feels more comfortable. They want to adopt this. They don't want to be the first mover making the mistake, and then they have to go back and get to the new standard solution. So there's a lot of opportunity for service providers to truly be successful in this space by collaborating and delivering on the promise of dynamic services. So thank you.